If you're tapped into this video, I assume you've already watched the series 56 Days. It has been on Amazon Prime since February 18th, and when I tell you the night I decided to watch it, I had to binge it all the way through. So if you haven't watched it yet, click off this video, go on Amazon Prime and watch 56 Days, then come back and let's talk. So, right off the bat, I knew that I was going to have to see this series all the way through. I'm so glad they released it all in one sitting because by episode 2, I was hooked. Really, halfway through episode 1, I was hooked. And the reason being is the acting in this show is top tier. Hats off to the casting directors. I'm talking Julie Schubert, Jenny Lewis, Sarah Kay, all three of y'all. I don't know who casted whom, but all three of y'all did y'all big one on that. So snaps all around. I think the decision to cast Dove Cameron and Avon Jogia was genius because Dove Cameron was a Disney star and Avon Jogia was a Nickelodeon star. So you have an audience of people who have grown up with them. So that's automatically built-in viewers, much as myself, who are already going to tune in just to see, hey, what are they up to now? And I think this was one of the best ways to break that Disney and Nickelodeon mold, because this was a psychosexual thriller and it was very thrilling. I'll tell you what, the first episode, when they focused on this decomposing skeleton in a bathtub, I'm like, well, who is that? I'm like, what in the Breaking Bad is going on? If you know, you know. It was just so refreshing to see them show off their acting chops, Dove Cameron and Avon Jogia especially, because Avon, I don't know what direction he was given from the directors, but he was just giving this Patrick Bateman 1,000-yard stare. And I was like, I don't know what he's up to, but that man is up to something. He's got a second life going on behind the mind, you know, behind the eyes. And I was skeptical from him, but also captivated as well. I think he did very well balancing the two energies with how his character Oliver interacted with Sierra, which was Dove Cameron's character. They're the two romantic leads in this thriller, but they're not the only leads that we get. You know, we get Lee and Carl, who are the buddy cop duo that are not only, you know, unsolving this mystery in real time with us, serving as the audience surrogate, but they're also having their own platonic relationship drama unfold. And I thought that was really well done. Lee and Carl, their banter is hilarious. I was laughing so many times, and I really appreciate how they were able to develop these characters throughout these 8 episodes because, you know, Oliver and Sierra, we're seeing their relationship over the course of 56 days, hence the title. But Lee and Carl, every time we cut to them, it's the same day. They are solving this mystery within 24 hours. And I think the juxtaposition between the time difference was very well done, and they were captivating characters all around. Every character really that we met felt like a real person to me, which is unfortunately not common in today's media. I think a lot of the time we get more archetypes rather than people, but every character in this series to me felt like a real person with a real backstory with underlying motives, and I really appreciated that. But by episode 2, I was like, who was in this bathtub? I need to know. I need to know. And I think it's excellent with the editing because from episode 1, even in the second episode, they keep cutting from like the eye socket of the skeleton and then almost like a match cut of Dove Cameron's eye. And, you know, that alone makes you think, oh, is it going to be her in the tub? And then at one point they find an earring in the tub once they're like, you know, scooping through the remains. They find an earring and we see that it's the stud earring that she wore. So then we're like, oh, is it her in the tub? But then, you know, first twist that we get is like, oh no, the remains were male. So then I'm like, oh my God, was it Oliver? And then I'm wondering how she got this grown man in this tub to decompose his body. So then I'm like, wow, I need to know what is going on. And I was hooked. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I think the editing and the direction was very well done. And the acting, like I said, I keep raving about the acting. And one thing about me is I love good acting. I'm a trained actor myself, so I eat that up every time. And from a storytelling perspective, I think it was very effective as well because this story could have went really cringe really fast. I know it was based off a book. I haven't read the book personally. I might give it a go after this, but I just watched the series a day ago, and now I'm recording this video talking to you lovely folks. But I can't say how close this series was adapted from the book. However, I think as a standalone piece of media, it holds up pretty well. I mean, I think right now it's actually #1 on Amazon Prime, so that says it right there. Everybody's tuning in, and I hope everybody's loving it. I made this video because I actually haven't seen a lot of commentary on this series yet, and I'm like, I want to talk. I want to yap. Let's kiki in the comments because I need to know what y'all are thinking, if y'all agree with what I feel about this series. Because while I did love pretty much everything about it, unfortunately, I do have to talk about the things I didn't necessarily love. #1 being the amount of nudity in the intimate scenes. I will say I am always team free the rhymes with blipple. You know what I'm trying to say. I can't say it verbatim because YouTube, but you know what I'm trying to say. I'm always team body positive, you know, and I've watched Euphoria with the best of them, so I'm not a prude by any means, but I had a moment where I was watching the first intimate scene between, I'll use the character name, Sierra and Oliver, and while they were getting heated, the kissing, you know, was getting a little bit more intense. I was like, ooh, I do not want to see Dove Cameron's you know what. And literally that's what we got shown right after that. And this is no shade to Dove, no shade to the directors. I understand why the nudity was necessary. It is a psychosexual thriller. And so the intimate scenes were going to be a given. It's a steamy story and their relationship progresses very fast. And usually with that comes a lot of heavy intimate scenes. And so that's fine. I understood it. It progressed the story. However, you know, I think my parasocial connection to these two actors, let me stress, parasocial. I have never met any of these people. These are two adults who have no idea that I even exist. So this is more my thing that I got to deal with than anything. I think I felt like I grew up watching them. It felt like, you know, seeing the chest of a classmate that you know, had classes with, but like you weren't that close to. That's how it felt. But I got past it. After like the first minute, I feel like I got past it. And then I was like, all right, there's that, you know? But like I said, I think this was also their intention to break away from those Disney and Nickelodeon molds. So I understand the necessity of it. And also, like I said, it progressed the story along. So I'm really not that mad about it. It was just jarring for me personally because of that parasocial connection. You know, these weren't two new actors on the scene. These are two people with very thick resumes under their belts. And so I had to adjust, but I got past it. Another thing that I didn't love is the amount of time we spent with Lee and Carl. I know I praised it earlier in the video, but their scenes had a much different tone compared to the scenes between Sierra and Oliver. So much so that at times I felt like I was watching a different show. I enjoyed it. I was still here for their drama, but because I said it takes place over the course of one singular day, the stakes didn't feel as high for me, and it just felt like it was a distraction from the main storyline because there were times where we were spending so much time with Lee and Carl, and I was like, who is in the tub? I need to know who is in that tub. Like, that was all I could think about. And I think that if we took out maybe like 5 scenes of Lee and Carl, they could have had 7 episodes instead of 8 episodes. For me, that would have paced a lot better, but that's also coming from me binging the series in one night, because I think I started it around 10-ish or 11-ish, and then by the time I finished episode 8, the sun was up. It was high in the sky. It was going on like 8 a.m. So I think I thought when I got to episode 7, I was like, oh, this is the last episode, right? And then it wasn't, and we had a whole other episode. So I think I would have preferred it to be 7 episodes, and I think the way to do that would have been to cut a little bit of Lee and Carl scenes. They're like the B plot versus the A plot, and I enjoyed the B plot, but the B plot was, you know, kind of taking over the A plot at times, and I just didn't love that. Another thing I didn't like, Jane Miller. Why is she here? Other than to stir up drama and get on my dang nerves. She's a journalist, but she's basically stalking Oliver. Like, you can say, oh, it's for the story, and I think she tries to give that excuse like, it's for the story. I wanted him to tell his side. And I'm like, girl, they said no. No means no. What are you doing? Why are you moving into his building, befriending his peers, trying to talk to his girlfriend? She already said leave her alone. Like, you don't know what she's got going on, but she already told told you that she wasn't one of your little friends. Like, she's not here to key. She's not on your team. I want to be like, oh, he killed somebody before. She said, I know. That should have been the end of the discussion. Don't go cornering her in the bathroom. Sierra literally at one point says to her,
"You're bad at your job."
I agree.
You are. You really are. Because why are you doing all of this? And then for her to be the one who was in the balaclava, taking pictures of the decomposing body in the bathtub, pulling the fire alarm. Why are you breaking and entering in the first place after both of these people threatened you physically? Well, maybe not physically, but they both cornered her, at least in their own individual way. Sierra put hands on her, put their hand around her throat and was like, girl, let me tell you something about me. But then, Oliver bashed her windshield in. She wasn't in the car, but like when she got out the car, he bashed the windshield in and then came up to her door of her apartment and was like, wow, I don't know who this Oliver St. Ledger is, but you better hope he doesn't find you. Like, he was giving her crazy eyes, threatening her without threatening her, like if any neighbor overheard the conversation, it would seem very friendly, which I thought was very smart on his part. But like, she was reading between the lines. Like, she was picking up what he was putting down. I just don't understand why she would have had the audacity to break and enter into their apartment in a balaclava. Girl, please be so for real. Be so for real.
Yes, he sirs. He ain't sirs.
Speaking of characters that I don't really know what their point of the story was, Oliver's mom, Chicky St. Ledger, she was only in like 2 episodes early on in the season, and they built her up in a way where it seemed like she was going to be more important than she was, but then she just kind of disappears halfway through the season, never to be mentioned or seen in a scene again. And I love the actress who played her, but was there like a scheduling issue? Did Rekha Sharma get another contract on another show somewhere, and then because of scheduling conflicts they couldn't film any more of her scenes? I don't know, because the little bit that we did see of her, she ate that down, and I was excited to see her because I last saw her in season 1 of Yellow Jackets. She was the private investigator hired by Taissa. I loved her in this old money role, like, hey, I just wanted to call about my life insurance policy because I want to make sure I'm not getting hacked. Like, I think she ate that down, and I love her cadence and her line delivery and also her interactions with Oliver. I thought that was very interesting. And then even when we have the flashback scene in episode 7, we don't even get to see her interact with teenage Oliver at all. And I kind of wanted that a little bit. Teenage Oliver was pretty much by himself in terms of parental guidance, except for the therapist, Dan Troxler. I wanted to see more of her, and I was very confused why she kind of just disappeared out of nowhere. But speaking of Dan Troxler, I think him being the body in the end worked very well, especially because we didn't really know until we saw the flashbacks why Shyla had a restraining order, why he had a restraining order against Shyla, why he was basically having a session with Oliver whenever Oliver needed him. He called, you pick up kind of thing. And I figured it was probably because of old money. Like, I figured that was probably like his best paying client, but I didn't realize that Oliver was his first client. It was really his opportunity to switch over from being school guidance counselor to an actual licensed psychotherapist. And I thought that was very interesting, but also seeing his snaky behavior, like what he did to Shane, evil man. I was yelling at my screen during that entire scene, because how do you tell a child to unalive themselves? He didn't say it directly. He didn't say like, hey, but he was basically telling him like, hey, I knew a guy who unalived himself, and I think he was better off for it. Like, that was basically what he told this child who, was in a very fragile mental state at the time. Why would you do that? Well, we know why. Money. But it made the reveal of him being the body in the bathtub, I think, more bearable for the audience, because we're like, yeah, Dan sucks. And I was also happy because I want to say around episode 5 or 4, they revealed it was a male skeleton. I was like, man, I don't want it to be either of them. At that point, I had grown to love both of the characters, and I didn't want either of them to be in the bathtub. And I was like, please let it just be some third party person who is unrelated to the relationship at all. Ideally, there'd be no body decaying in the bathtub. That would be preferred. But if there has to be one, I didn't want to be Sierra or Oliver. I was right. It wasn't either of them, and they went on the run, Bonnie and Clyde style, and I kind of liked that. I will say the last line of the note that Sierra leaves to her mom, I think I've been calling her Sierra this entire time, that that Ciara leaves to her mom in the end of the series, and she's like, "Are you crazy like your mommy? Or are you crazy like your daddy?" Go to bed. You thought you ate that. Good night. Like, that was the one line where I was just like, that was kind of bad. Everything else I loved. I loved everything else. I swear I loved everything else. Because, like I said, I think the acting really made this story as effective as it needed to be. And the direction made this story what it needed to be. Because, like I said, Avanjogia kept doing this Patrick Bateman, like, 1,000-yard stare, where he's thinking hard about something. I don't know what he's thinking, but he's thinking hard about something. And then Dove Cameron had this approach where she had this look, and I think one of the characters described it was like, she looks like she knows everything about you, like she can see right through you. And she definitely, I think, had that. The cheekbones helped a lot. Somebody was like, "I don't understand how you can still be with him knowing that he killed somebody." She was like, "No one's asking you to." And she ate that. Like, they ate that. I was very happy. I would rate this a 10 out of 10. Even with my little critiques aside, I would rate this a 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. I'm telling all my friends about it. I hope it stays #1 on Amazon Prime for a while. I hope it wins an Emmy. I'm very happy with it. And I can't wait to see Dove and Avon in more projects, in more adult projects. Well, that sounds more projects as adults. And I'm excited for their next chapters as actors. And that's all I got on that. For those of you who were here to talk about 56 Days, that part of the video is done. Feel free to click off. If you want to stay and hear me talk about other stuff real quick, hi, how are you? I put the glasses on so we can get a little serious for a moment. I have been on YouTube on and off for the better part of a decade. And for those of you who have been around since the beginning of this channel, you have seen many different iterations of the content that I am putting out. And some of you have been around long enough to know that I've dabbled in commentary content before, and I am trying to get back into that. I know the last iteration of this channel was me sharing my sobriety journey and doing tarot readings and, being a little bit more vulnerable. And I realized that I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be this mentor figure of sorts. And I myself am not perfect. And I'm still on a sobriety journey. I will admit there was a small relapse, a small bump in the road, but I'm back on track. And I'm not going to be so vocal about that journey anymore, but just know that it's a journey that I'm on. In the background, I have a lot of thoughts on the media that I consume, and I don't want to keep holding my friends and family conversation hostage, because the fact of the matter is they just don't think about the shows that we watch as in depth as I do. They're not over analyzing everything while we're watching, and I need a space to share those thoughts as I, watch things, so I can free up space in my mind for my own individual projects that I'm working on. I am a writer myself, so I love the art of storytelling, and I love breaking down how other people tell their stories to understand how to better tell my stories. And I hope that y'all will stay along for the journey. And for those of you who are new and just decided to listen to this little ramble at the end, hey, thanks. Welcome. And I'll see y'all in the next video.